In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Bawaal, which came out in 2023 on Amazon Prime. It stars Varun Dhawan, who I'm a huge fan of, Janvi Kapoor, who I've not seen much of, director Nitesh Tiwari, who's done films like Dangal before and Chichore, I think, as well. Um, and there's three core themes that I want to cover in today's episode: marriage and masculinity, which are going to be two of the smaller themes that we don't really talk much about because there's not a lot there. The bigger one is about media. Well, I suppose media, masculinity, and marriage, all three of those are in the context of the big red flag that this movie was. Yeah, there it is. In this episode, I'm probably going to be ruffling a few feathers because this film did not land in the way that I had hoped it would have landed. If anything, it was quite triggering, annoying, frustrating for all relevant reasons. It got, well, strangely, some very good reviews, and the only bad reviews were about the things that I'm about to discuss in this episode. So, before I do delve right into that, I do want to take a moment to address something that's very important, something that's close to my heart and to many people as well around the world. Because I am a firm believer that if you don't use whatever platforms you have, all of my three listeners that might be out there, hello to you, thank you to you, I love you guys. But if you don't address these things in whatever platform that you have, however small, however big, whatever frame that might be in, then what is the point of having such platforms, right? And I want to take a moment of tribute to spend talking about Palestine and what's happening there. And you might think, okay, but this is a podcast about psychosocial themes in Bollywood. Well, let me tell you, my friend, that I have never been someone who believes that things just happen by accident. I've never been someone who believes that things are not so interconnected. I'm a huge believer in globalization, the interconnectedness of the world, and the fact that the butterfly effect exists. 6 degrees of connections. What's the word? 6 degrees of separation. Is that the theory? I'm a big believer in all of these things, and I do want to share with you one particular story to tell you how Palestine and Bollywood is actually connected. So after the October the 7th incident that occurred in Israel and the subsequent atrocities that have been unfolding since then. I mean, at the time of recording this, we're on day 140 something of the ongoing genocide. During the aftermath of October 7th, I received a screenshot of a conversation between two academics, one Indian based in the UK and one Palestinian. He was alive at October the 7th. Sadly, in the genocide, after that, he has now passed away. He is an alumni of UCL, and has many different. In fact, I should really tell you quite appropriately in order to honor his name. Exactly, a bit more about his background. Refat Al-Arir is who I want to talk about, and he's a Palestinian writer, poet, professor, and activist from Gaza, which is undergoing a horrendous genocide. He passed on the 7th of December 2023. Um, he wrote the famous poem before he died, If I Must Die. So some of you guys may have heard that being recited at university, sorry, at vigils. Well, I know that at UCL they held a vigil, some of the students, to honor his death, to honor his works. It was recited at various different Palestine protests. Now, the conversation in particular was between Rafat Al-Arid and Professor Sunny Singh, who is a university lecturer, a novelist, public intellectual, a champion for decolonization and inclusion. She's written the book A Bollywood State of Mind. She currently lectures at the London Metropolitan University. And this interaction is between the two of them on Twitter in 2021. Rafat had written, Amar Akbar Anthony is a favourite of mine. What a beautiful movie. I wish one day I could write about Bollywood's impact on the Palestinian First Intifada. Coolie was particularly a hit. Now, this really speaks to my soul because the movies like Amar Akbar Anthony, like Coolie, the olden day movies showing this brotherhood and unity between different religions, showing, the traditional working class trade unionist man rising up against oppression, like that did something to my soul even as a kid. So it's quite interesting to see here that Rafat is claiming that the impact that that had on the Palestinian First Intifada was quite amazing. Sunny Singh then replied back to him saying, That would be incredible, as in if Rafat was to write about the Bollywood's impact on the Palestinian Intifada. She writes back, that would be incredible. I remember reading about when Israel closed the cinema that played Bollywood in the West Bank. They understood its dangers. I'd love to talk to you about it. Rafat then replied, it would be my honor. My PhD supervisor was Indian, and she was thrilled knowing the likes of Amitabh Bachchan and Amjad Khan had impacted us Palestinian stone throwers in the first Intifada, especially that her own PhD was on coolies. Now, having read that, I then got really gassed because I was planning for this podcast as well in this time. I got in touch with Professor Sunny Singh. She has been traveling during that time, so the communication has been a bit slow, but subsequently she has replied and she is interested in being a guest on the podcast, or at least having a chat with me, I believe. But life has got in the way, the film shooting and stuff has got in the way that I'm a part of at the moment. So she and I will definitely, or rather, I will continue to chase that up, especially now that I have connections with UCL, where Rafat was an alumni member of. I will chase that up, and I will continue to, with your prayers and blessings and your support. If that is something that you want to have happen, then I would love to speak to her about Bollywood's impact on Palestinian liberation and the impact that it has on the world, so that we can really get more people to stop saying it's just a movie, because believe me, it is not. So, with that said, I did want to take that moment to honor the Palestinian liberation movement and talk to us about how we can continue to use our platforms, even these little 2 minute segments of talking about it. You've just got to keep it going, keep talking about it. Now, with that said, I want to segue into our movie Bawaal and talk about the absolute crap show that it was in relation to just its general sensitivity and tone deafness. I have a bit of a problem with Bollywood as it is. If you remember in previous episodes, I spoke about how my inspiration, Harun Rashid, said that Bollywood is like this big problematic family member. Excuse me, his journalistic integrity is one that I really, really value. In that he holds actors and writers, etc., to account when they are, demonstrating problematic views, or they're using Bollywood as a propaganda tool. Now, I want to be able to echo some of that. I will never be able to be as qualified or as sensitive and tactical and brave as he is about it potentially, but I would like to tackle some of that when I talk about Bawal in this episode, because for you to write and create a movie and to be a part of a movie that so closely links to the Holocaust, but not say a word about what is happening in Palestine, it doesn't sit well with me in the slightest. So, if you haven't seen the movie already, I really don't care about spoilers in this one, because it just was that crap anyway. And to be fair, there's no major spoilers as such. It's more kind of like a journey that you go on. So, a quick 5 minute synopsis. Excuse me. The movie starts with an introduction to Ajay Dixit, played by Varun Dhawan, who is an image-conscious narcissist. He teaches history at a school in Lucknow. He hates his life of lies, despite the respect he's held in, thanks to his philosophical tendency of fake it till you make it. Now, we did speak a little bit about whether he was a narcissist or not, whether we could label him with narcissistic personality disorder, or did he just have narcissistic traits? And being able to identify the differences between those is quite important, especially in order for people to receive the help that they actually need for a diagnosed condition like NPD. Ajay even gets married to the most beautiful woman in town to raise his social status, but he instantly regrets it because he sees her having an epileptic fit on the wedding night, and that's when he turns quite cold and harsh towards her. He, forbids her from coming outside the house with him. He keeps her at home with his parents. He just doesn't want to be seen with her at all. He finds himself and his image in a bit of a conundrum, if you like, when he slaps one of his students in a frustration over a doubt regarding World War II. So Ajay actually doesn't know half the shit he's talking about at school. He's a teacher, but he kind of makes stuff up and he encourages the students to kind of learn by themselves while he takes all the credit for having taught them. Now, one of the students kind of catches him out on something and has questions and keeps doubting and engaging in all those good critical thinking things that we want our students to do. And Ajay ends up slapping him. That student turns out to be the son of a local politician who obviously wants the teacher suspended and out. Out of despair of wanting to escape the wrath of this politician, Ajay decides to kind of revamp, or get his image back by going across Europe to visit the places that he deemed were important to World War II. including places like Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam, including Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland. He takes Nisha along with him because his parents hope that it could resolve their marital conflicts. Nisha being played by Janvi Kapoor, who is the wife that he has kind of rejected. And now this sets them on a journey that changes their entire perspective and their views on interpersonal conflicts as they kind of cover both life, marriage, and history lessons along the way. Now we see this progress of both of their relationships, of his personality, and various themes come out of that. The movie itself, I felt, was very choppy. It was very stop start stop start. It would be kind of like a, 1 second we're seeing the relationship between Ajay and Nisha develop, and then slap bang we're into a historical flashback montage of the Holocaust, and then we're back to the relationship, and then we're back to a montage, and it just did not fit as seamlessly. I can see the intentionality behind the writers and the directors and what they were trying to do. I can see that they were trying to build parallels and metaphors, but honestly, with everything that's happening around the world, it just does not. It did not land well. I mean, one of the taglines was literally, every love story goes through its own Auschwitz. Really, every relationship goes through its, genocide of a group of people. Every relationship goes through its purposeful blocking, systematic blocking of resources, poverty, famine, starvation, bombing, killing, gas chambering, based on where you're from, based on your religion. The parallels, it just didn't parallel. I don't know what you were trying to get with that, like it was a hot mess. Now, the core themes that I wanted to talk about, the three M's: marriage, masculinity, and the media. Let's start off by talking about marriage, because one of the things that I would say is a saving grace about the movie is about how we grow through a marriage. I wanted to raise a question though, as you know, as I do in these episodes. Um, there's a scene where Ajay and Nisha are having an argument because she's kind of deciding, look, do I want out of this marriage now, or do I want to give it one last shot? And she decides, I want to give it one last shot. And she's saying, I want to go to Europe with you. And he is his response to this is, what's your problem? Like, why are you so unhappy in this marriage? It's not like I hit you, it's not like I shout at you. And I think we talk a lot when these issues occur, especially from narcissistic men, about what we don't do to our partners, and therefore why she doesn't have a right to be unhappy. Often domestic violence is reduced to a physical or a sexual abuse, but we don't actually give airtime to how emotional abuse is just as impactful. Now, relationships are about fulfilling the rights of the partner. Sometimes it might be better to think less about what you're not doing in a relationship and focus on what it is that you are doing. You are manipulating a narrative. You are purposefully ignoring her. You are purposefully grounding her. You're purposefully, keeping her away from you and from your family and from your friends. You've pretty much reduced her state to just some presence in the house that you don't really get along with. And I think that's something to be said there about the way in which we view marriages, or our responsibilities in a relationship, we should say, especially in a South Asian community, in terms of what we do and what we don't do. And I think that that is something to be said in terms of a coaching tool, perhaps, or a relationship counseling tool. It certainly made me think about how I can incorporate it into my practice with couples and with people looking to enter relationships, in terms of what do you bring to the table and what do you not bring to the table, both positives and negatives, before you can kind of work through that. The second thing is, yeah, if I go back to masculinity, here we go. The second theme. Now, masculinity, we hear the terms toxic masculinity being thrown around a lot lately on social media, for example. And we see both toxic and vulnerable masculinity in the character of Ajay Dixit, which I have to take a side note and say, you know what, this character was insufferable. And I think that's a testament to Varun Dhawan, who played him quite well, almost too well, because he was annoying, he was frustrating. You wanted to really hurt him because of how much he frustrated you. But I guess that was the point, and the fact that he got that feeling across probably shows that Varun Dhawan did a good job. We even see it in the way that the character is referred to. Like when he's referred to as Ajju Bhaiyya, that's his kind of social standing name, the one that the rest of the community know him as, versus what his parents and what his wife knows him as is Ajay, his government name, if you like. And I think the two of those things demonstrate a clear um, metaphorical, I suppose you could say, distinction between his toxic side and his vulnerable side. Toxic Ajubaya is the one who rejects Nisha, is the one who performs performative actions for the sake of, again, performing, and nothing really much deeper than that. While vulnerable masculinity, vulnerable Ajay is the one who asks her questions about, her life. How does she know so much French, for example? How is she able to navigate a city by herself? What are her likes? What are her dislikes? What are her interests? How does she become the person that she is versus, and him being able to be open about his own issues and his, I suppose you could say, his awareness of his problems. And I think the movie shows, perhaps you could say, like, it's every person has their own internal battle. Would that be more appropriate to say, rather than every love story has its own war? Every relationship goes through its Auschwitz. We only realize its significance there. Like it's problematic. We would never hear ourselves saying every relationship has its Gaza. So how can you say, like, it just didn't bang? And I think what the intention was is that every person goes through their own internal battle. Now that bit poses a good question, because the question I want to pose with that is, if that, let's give it the benefit of the doubt and let's say that that is the question that we want to focus on. Every person goes through their internal battle. Would Ajay have gone through that internal battle if it wasn't for Nisha holding up a mirror to him? If it wasn't for the politician dragging his ass? Or would he have just carried on living in his complete oblivion and carried on being the narcissistic, obnoxious guy that he was? And I think there's something there to be said about the role that partners play in our inner healing. Does it require, and this is a question for all the listeners out there, does it require a partner to hold up a mirror to ourselves in order for us to become aware of our problematic traits? Or is that not their responsibility and we should somehow receive this awakening by ourselves? How? I don't know. Perhaps you guys have the answers, let me know. But is it fair to rely on a partner? Is it fair to expect a partner to have that? Or should we be doing that work before we even get into a relationship? I think that was one of the things that was left for me, because Ajay only became a better person, I feel, because of Nisha. And I don't even think Nisha tried, to be honest. She was just, living her best life, doing the best that she possibly could. And just being around her, he was kind of forced to really check himself, because, she didn't go into these long dialogues. She didn't go into these long, you know, um, preachy lectures. She didn't go out of her way to teach him any lessons. She really was just doing the best that she could, and living her best life. And I think that's why I kind of really resonated with her and really liked her, in that she was able to just not pressure. And I don't know, I felt sorry for her, felt sad for her, but she was just able to, as I keep saying, do the best that she could. The final theme that I want to talk about is media. I think there's something that I used to teach in sociology called hyperreality or simulacra, a concept given to us by Baudrillard, which is the idea that we live in this simulation because of the media and how accessible the world is to us. Now, Baudrillard specifically talks about the example of the Gulf War, actually. And he talks about, look, the reality on the ground of what people are experiencing in the Gulf War is a stark day and night difference to what we in the West are experiencing by watching it through our television screens. Bearing in mind that Baudrillard was writing, I believe, in the 70s, so the television screen was common, but probably not even in all households. Um, and that was our mainstream media. That was the way that people had access to information.
Now, because of that big filtering process that is occurring, yeah, the mic quality might be a little bit different now because the previous one ran out of battery, so I had to start again. Yeah, because of that big filtering process that is occurring between what is happening on the ground and what we're receiving through our television screens, things get diluted, things get misconstrued, get changed. We can bring in other concepts like agenda setting, gatekeeping. We already know, I mean, if I go back to the beginning example of Palestine, we already know how much the media is responsible for the depiction of events that may or may not be happening as it is real. So we often rely on things like citizen journalism. We rely on people on the ground using their phones, using lifetime videos, etc., to educate us about what is happening. And I think this movie poses that question about the Holocaust, what actually his understanding of it was, which was very little, and the fact that he could have just carried on learning from it from a textbook, but he went and I'm not saying this by the way to justify how amazing he is. We all know he did it for performative reasons, but there is a difference between going to a place and seeing it with your own eyes. And again, he still did not was not able to do that. He was relying on archaic measures, museums, things that had existed from the past. There was nothing really there to say that he was getting any more of an accurate depiction of it. But I think it definitely applies to our current society, this idea that he is so far removed from the reality of the Holocaust. And it had to take him a sense of holding a mirror up to himself to check his privilege, to check his understanding, to check, I'm actually understanding this on a different level now that I would speak to you guys about it. Part of his growth was being able to check himself and check his privilege and check his social standing before he realized that, yeah, I'm not shit. Like, there's there's so much more of a reality to this Holocaust and how relatable it is to us, air quotes around that, because I just don't think the film did that very well, than meets the eye. And I think there's something there to be said about us as well. As we are navigating this world, we're living in a genocide, which, like, is just such a wild thing to even say. We're living through it and watching it through our screens. And we're so far removed from it, and some of us more so far removed from it, that we're not even willing to check our privilege, because that would mean shaking up the status quo. That would mean shaking up what it is that we're used to and shaking up the good life that we currently have. And none of us really want to shake that up, because that might mean taking responsibility. That might mean giving up some comfort and then getting into discomfort. And that might mean losing some of those comforts. So, as much as I have issues with the movie, I think it poses some thought for sure. I don't think it does it very well. I think I've been able to get those because I've been able to stretch it a little bit because of my background and my understanding. But I hope that being able to share that with you, it's got you to think it a little bit differently as well. So we're going to wrap up this episode by thinking about some questions. I want to just go back to what I said to you guys earlier. Is narcissism something that we can become self-aware of? Or is it really shown to us when a loved one holds the mirror up? Even then, how willing are we to receive it? Loads of questions here about narcissism. Please get in touch with me. Let me know about your thoughts on it. Let me know in your comments. Let me know in your conversations that you have with your friends. What are your thoughts on it? Let me know if and how we can get Professor Sunny Singh on the podcast. If anyone's got a contact even closer, that would be great, just so we can chase up some of those emails. Equally, if that is something, or if you want her, I mean, she's got a lot of knowledge on older movies. If there's a particular movie that you want me and Professor Sunny Singh to talk about in terms of being able to incite revolution, then let us know that as well. Recommendations wise, I can recommend Arjun Reddy or Kabir Singh. Arjun Reddy is the original movie of Kabir Singh, which became very problematic for its portrayal of narcissistic men and abusive men, actually. Toxic masculinity. We can also talk about the movie Barbie, which was a huge hit in 2023. Loads of different psychosocial themes within that. And the third movie I want to talk about is Dum Laga Ke Haisha, which is, again, bringing in that idea of masculinity and marriage. What to do if you end up getting married to a person that you're not particularly attracted to. So, that said, we wrap up on this episode. If you found it insightful, then stay tuned for the next one, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, and there's going to be a lot of heavy talk on trauma with that one. Don't forget to subscribe, follow our socials under @MutedHealing, and share the podcast with another cinema buff. Remember, the next time someone wants to judge you for how deeply you feel with movies, I got you. You just tell them it's not just a movie.